Welcome, everyone, to our next episode of TSSA Talks. I'm Brian Johnson. I'm happy to be here. You'll notice our venue is different today. We really appreciate our partnership with the folks at Exit In, a historic music venue here in Nashville. But Chris Cobb and his team over there very rightfully have decided to close their venue down for a period of time because we're having a real surge of cases here in Nashville. We really appreciate how seriously they've taken this pandemic. We know what a hurt it's put on them, and we're just happy to be partners with them. We are still partnering with them. We hope to be back at their venue in the near future, but we didn't want our interview series to stop. So we're really excited to be joined today by Daniel Gordon. Daniel's here joining us for our next episode of TSSA Talks. Daniel is the head boys soccer coach at the University School in Nashville. He is also one of the leaders of one of our member clubs here at Tennessee State Soccer Association, FC Academy. Yeah. And for many years, he's been the chairman of the United Soccer Coaches Black Coaches Association. So with all that, Daniel, welcome. Thank you for joining us here today. We really appreciate the opportunity. The whole idea of this interview series has been we want to bring a voice and shine a light to some underrepresented communities in our game. We think that there are many underrepresented communities in our game here in the United States, here in Tennessee, unfortunately. We want to see if we can make a difference in that regard. And specifically, we wanted to speak to Black voices because of many of the things that are going on in our country. We feel like it's very timely that we do a better job of listening. And so we really appreciate you coming and joining us today. For part one of each of our interview series, the thing we've asked each of our candidates to do is help us understand how they came to soccer, how soccer became such a part of their lives. Can you go back to in childhood, whenever it was? One of our guys who really didn't come to the game until his late teens, but for most of it, it was as a younger child. How did soccer get to become such a big part of your life?
Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you for inviting me here with Tennessee Soccer Association. So my journey started from a child in Kingston, Jamaica. In Jamaica, we had to do track and field first and foremost.
It's a national birthright.
It's a national birthright. So, but we had the opportunity to, just like basketball here in the country, here in the States, where we have pickup outside and all that stuff. Back home in Jamaica, there's also the pickup version on the street with rocks. And as kids, we would set up on the street and play until nightfall. But during the process, my brothers were really good soccer players. And so as the third son of my family, I kind of pick up off them. Went to middle school and high school that were dominant in soccer. And so I got to play a whole lot there and train with some of the best coaches from all over the world coming down to the island. So with that's my journey. I went on to play at the G.C. Foster College of Physical Education and Sport, among other sports that I also played. So I went from middle school, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and then through that process, it was like one of those sports that I know I could play and could contribute to my team and personally too. I love the sport, and so that was the journey from there onward. So
you mentioned siblings. Yeah. You mentioned so you have two older brothers.
Two older brothers,
and so as sort of the third brother, there's a specific role in every family that the youngest takes on. So, but you also, we find, I think, a lot in coaching that when we see kids who, you've got a brother or a sister who played before, it's likely that you're already that maybe step ahead of the average normal kid who's coming in without that benefit. What was it like? Was there a lot of competition between yourself and your brothers? Was it friendly? Was it, 2 against 1? How did you guys how did that work in sort of the family dynamic as you're growing up?
Well, my brothers, they never really normally, they were so good that they think I was just not competitive for them. So
how much older are they?
They're 4 or 5 years apart.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're older than me, and so they were like, really skillful players since they were young. And so it so happened that I went to one of the schools that my older brother went to, and so they first of all they're like, "Oh, you're Hubert's brother," like, "Oh, you
Big
can play."
expectations.
Big expectations.
Uh-huh.
So that was the stressful level in high school, when the coaches saw me and they were like, "Oh man, your brother, he did great here at the school, and I hope you can do the same thing." But I was not my brother. The thing that I had is like, I was like the kind of the intellectual player. I kind of assess everything and take a long time to put it in process and ask the coaches a lot of questions. But I had speed, and so the speed helped me a lot in terms of the position that they wanted me to play. So I started out, my first high school game was playing outside right mid. And then, nobody could really beat me on that side, left or right. And then the coach put me at center forward after that. And then it just blossoms from there. So, yeah.
So it came along, and you really feel like, did it accelerate? Because you mentioned playing other sports. That's a big topic about soccer in our country,
Yeah.
is specialization. So as a child, you played, obviously, track and field, you mentioned. What were some of the other sports that you played, and when did soccer become sort of your primary sports endeavor?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we had to run track and field. That's a given. You don't need a choice. I played field hockey back home. I played basketball. We had outdoor courts and all that stuff, and of course, it was so funny that I started doing cross country runs, but our cross country runs takes us on the road, on the beach, in the hills. It's nothing like here. So it's like, it was like 26 miles road relays and stuff like that we used to run.
Wow.
And so we have 26 runners, 1 mile each. Sometimes the coach would say, hey, Gordon, you have to run 2 miles today. And it was just the norm, for us to do that. So, but everything built around soccer, because I got really fit, and I got really, I could manage a full game without subbing out. And so all those, cross training really worked into everything that I did.
Was it in high school where you began to just specialize just in soccer, or even in high school were you still running still doing cross country events and things like that? Or I guess at what point did you specialize just with soccer?
Man, I don't. I went through playing 3 different sports up to in college as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I did. In high school, I did all the sports. In college, field hockey was a big deal for us, for the school there, because I played in high school and was pretty good at it. And the formation field hockey is just like soccer, So you have the different same positions. So I ended up playing forward in field hockey too, and that's with a stick. And then with soccer, it's on when I was in my senior year in college. I started going out and just specialize in that, because I had to do teaching practices and all that stuff. And then I was one of those community resource students at the school, so I didn't have time to do the other sports while I was a senior getting ready to graduate. So soccer from there on just stuck with me then.
It became the primary one at that point. But for a long time, well into your 20s, well into your college career,
Yeah.
You're still playing multiple sports.
Yeah.
And do you think that helped your development in soccer, you mentioned field hockey specifically, there are some formational differences. Clearly, finishing was a part of your skill set, which is why the coaches put you forward and left you there ultimately. You also played in a similar position in field hockey.
Yeah.
Or do you think that those multiple different experiences from different environments helped you to evolve more efficiently in soccer?
Absolutely, and I encourage kids to just, like, they're young, I think they should explore other sports avenue, to see how close it is to their particular sports in terms of training, because I train year round, so because I have the sports year round, and summertime we'll take a break, and but the summertime breaks will be camps, or we'll go down to Miami to play in the Miami Classic then out of Jamaica, and so it was different for me, because as a kid, my parents always wanted us boys to be doing something to keep us out of trouble, you know. And so we always doing something that keeps us occupied, and it worked out really well for us. Yeah.
Terrific. Well, give us an idea on context, Daniel. So I'm not going to ask anybody their age. I don't ask anybody their age or their weight. It's with lessons I've learned. But
yeah.
So you're finishing up college now. Where did you go to college?
I went to G.C. Foster College of Physical Education and Sports.
And that's there in Jamaica, correct?
Yes, part of the University of the West Indies.
Okay.
So the G.C. Foster College is for coaches, PE teachers.
So a very sport-specific curriculum there.
Correct. Yes.
And was education a part of your plan all along? So you're now as a player, but clearly you're thinking towards the future. We all have to make that transition at some point. You know, we're youth players. All of a sudden, when we graduate from high school, when we begin to move on, college becomes much more independent for most of us. Where our parents are still very involved if we're lucky enough to still have parents, but we have that opportunity. But we start to think more independently. We begin to make more plans for the future. Was continuing to be involved in sport always a part of your plan?
Yeah, it was what we do in the culture that we have, you know. It was always that plan. When it comes to being in education, that was a different setting because I really wanted to be a doctor. And in Jamaica, we did the GCE O levels and A levels from Oxford University, and
this is from the English education
system. So if you didn't have X amount of O levels and A levels, it's very, very difficult to get into some of the specialized professional
law or medicine.
Right. So being as an athlete and was involved very much in those sports, it just wasn't the time factor for me. And so the university kind of looked at my curriculum because they kind of set it for you. And they was like, hey, I think you'd be a great coach, great teacher, and let's try this route. And so it was a great decision for me to go that route because I get to see the world, I get to see it, teach kids, I get to be a part of the community. So it was a wonderful feeling.
So the leadership there from the university to help you pick a career path and then ultimately complete that path through college to then set you on what has been your career moving forward. That seems like it would have been a really crucial that kind of intervention at that point, because you had dreams of being a doctor, and I know in many cultures that's a very obviously it's a very valued thing.
Yeah.
But if that's not going to be the path, being able to decide maybe I've got to make a change now, it would appear that that's been something that would have served you very well.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Terrific. So now you're graduating from college. You're still in Jamaica now. Living in Jamaica, sort of, can you talk us through what were the issues, or were there any, in terms of race? I know, again, you're a local, your family's there. How does race become a part of the conversation involving sport in Jamaica as you're growing up through college? Or is it just not even a conversation?
It's not. It was never a conversation back home. Despite my next door neighbor was from England, my professor John Green was from Liverpool. He lived down the road from me, and so it wasn't an issue at all. We accept everybody. We're just easygoing people. So everybody come. When I was graduating from college, I'd already gotten a job in a private school, and
there in Jamaica as well?
In Jamaica, right?
Okay.
So the thing was that private school had expatriates kids, and mostly Caucasian from the embassies. The children of those folks that works in the embassy. So it's one of the big private school back home that I got the job at, and so it was like it was something that the diversity of it all it was really good, and so we never had any situation apart from with race. One thing we always, and I think since I came to this country, I realized that something that we were doing back home that we shouldn't be doing is like all the Chinese will call him Mr. Chin, everybody's Mr. Chin for us. And so, but that's how we grew up, and like, we didn't even ask the people their name. We're like, what is your name? But we know them Mr. Chin. And the Chinese at the time, they were very influential in terms of getting equipment and stuff into the country. And Germany had the same thing. The University of Stuttgart had a lot of stuff to give to my college. So we were closer to them as well. The U.S. Minister of Education had Martha Swayze, who became my American mom here in this country. So she would come to the university and work with us athletes on gymnastics and dance and all that stuff, because we had to do those things as athletes.
Sure.
So we met her, and she took me on as her son from Jamaica. And so it wasn't a race thing. We didn't know anything about that.
So your teammates were multicultural, your coaches were from many different
countries, and stuff like that.
So diversity was just a part of our game in your country.
Right, and thus it's like the motto is out of many one people. So it's clear that we didn't have any hang up. My mom was very skeptical. I mean, when Miss Swayze said, "Hey, come to the stage," she said, "No, don't go there."
And Daniel, this is perfect. I want us to segue here. So from part one, talking about you coming. So at this point, you've gotten a job. You're in Jamaica working in a private school early in your 20s, right after graduating from college.
Correct.
When from there did you come to the States? And then I want us to take a break, and we'll come back for part two, where we talk about your journey from the States, then arriving to now today. So at what point did you make the decision to move to the U.S.?
Yeah, so I'm like a traveler, man. It's like I was at the private school. And because I was traveling, to Miami and all those places for soccer and track and field, and Martha Swayze had said to me, the lady would take me on, and she said, every summer I used to come to Chattanooga, Signal Mountain in Chattanooga, and one day she said, "Hey, I think it's time for you to come here now." And so you had enough in Jamaica. And so I talked to my mom, because with my mom, my dad died when I was 1. And so it was my mom, and she said, "No, everything I read about it is like race, they're going to kill you, especially Signal Mountain. I don't even know where that is." And so everybody was like, so I decided to go, and because I'm like that experimental type of personality, I would just go. And then from there, I went to MTSU, where I started the club program there at MTSU.
So roughly what year did you then arrive in Tennessee? Not just to the States, but you came right to Tennessee. Roughly what year did you land in Signal Mountain?
1990. 1990, I landed in Signal Mountain, yeah.
Terrific. Okay, well, that's where we're going to pause for part one. So for now, we've got a great introduction into the life that you lived growing up, how the Big Brothers played a part, and how the diversity and inclusion was a big part of what you experienced in our game, in your country growing up. And now when we come back for part two, we're going to talk about how now all of a sudden this Jamaican man is now impacting not just Tennessee and Middle Tennessee, but really our whole community. So we'll be right back with more TSSA Talks with Daniel Gordon here in just a couple minutes. Come back and see us.